Well, I think I know everybody in here. It's kind of relieving to know everybody in here. So, you know what they say? They save for the last for last. So I'm the last. So very, very impressive stuff. I keep watching this. I'm like, God, I don't like hold a candle to some of these programs, but it's so neat because we're all doing something different. And I keep thinking, gosh, I should do that. I should do that. And it's all related and different at the same time. So my project is in the planning phases. I was talking to Nigel about it earlier. Hopefully I've got some good building blocks for it, a good skeleton so that I can take off with it as soon as I find the time. But it is the 4-H Leader Institute. So this idea came to me actually at our state conference last year. We had a kind of a roundtable networking session one morning, and it was the last morning, and I kind of just had this like light bulb pop, like, why don't we do this for our volunteers? You know, we all enjoy coming together, networking, finding out what everybody does. We all enjoy it and have a good time. We don't do it for volunteers. And so this idea kind of came about, and it's kind of been on in my head for a while. So whenever the PDLC came along, it was an opportunity for me to kind of explore that idea a little bit. And I will say all my photos are 4-Hers, so I love some of these. I picked my favorite photos. That little girl I think is adorable. Her name's Molly. She's great. And Mona as well is she's 84 years old, and she still comes and works for us part-time during fair. So, and does our sewing with us as well. So just a little bit of background on Saratoga County. So we are located in the Capital District. I'll show a little bit more of that later on. Really excited. Put enrollments in on Tuesday. We had 602 youth club members already. So that's kind of fun. We were at 598 at the end of last year. So I don't know where we're going to wind up. We always get that big push after fair because the kids are out of school and people are like, I got to find something for my kid to do. So I don't know where we're going to wind up, but it was pretty fantastic to be reaching that number this early. The kids are involved in a variety of things. Obviously, we're all pretty familiar with these things. The general interest clubs, which would be arts and crafts, sewing, gardening, etc., doing a wide variety of things. Our special interest clubs, whether it's a dairy club, a horse club, shooting sports, fly fishing. We actually have a fly fishing club. Robotics is a huge program. We got around 75 kids in our robotics program throughout the county. And then various countywide programming that kids can be involved in throughout the year, regardless of if they're in a club or an individual. So dog obedience, other types of workshops. We did a flight workshop last year, which was super fun. And special events like public presentations fair. And with that, we have over 250 volunteers registered in our county. I think it's like 267. That's what it was on Tuesday. And so those volunteers act in a variety of roles. Most of the time we think about them being club leaders. So those are the people who are interacting with youth on a regular basis, whether it's monthly meetings or taking part in larger programs as club leaders. Program guidance, so maybe members of our program committee, event committees, fundraising committees, or special project committees. So they might be on a horse PDC or a dairy cattle program development committee. And then we also have our instructors and evaluators, so people who come and evaluate our fashion review or evaluate at the fair. And I will say a lot of these people act in multiple roles. So they might be a club leader and do a variety of things for us on that side of things. But when we break it all down, they are representatives of our association. With 250 volunteers, training is very important, but it's also a piece that I feel like we struggle with. Not for any lack of trying on our part or their part, but there's a lot of challenges, and we'll go through what those are. So, 4-H youth development needs effective volunteers. So, project knowledge is generally the first thing we look for with volunteers. We have people who are trained to be shooting sports instructors. We have people who are very good at equine knowledge. We have people who are very good at dairy knowledge. They might be sewers, whatever it might be. Project knowledge tends to be what we see on the surface. But these people also have to have a system knowledge. You have to know the resources that are available to them through not only our county association, but through the state association and things like that. This, I think, is where we kind of fall flat a little bit. A lot of our volunteers don't realize the bigger picture. They know their project knowledge, and we don't ever really get a chance to take them deeper into that. And then the positive youth development. We always talk about positive youth development. We have the online training. We try to get to these people throughout the year to go through these positive youth development concepts, but it's hard to do. Our 4-H program needs diverse and dynamic programs. So we need, and I feel like this is another place we kind of fall flat. We try the best we can to meet the needs of our communities, but we kind of set ourselves in an echo chamber, which we are serving generally the same types of kids. Our leaders all come from very, similar backgrounds, at least in Saratoga County, that's the case. We don't ever kind of branch out and see what the larger needs of our community are. We do some community service and we say, okay, we're serving our community, we're good. So we'll talk about that in a minute as well. This diverse programming has to have some youth buy-in as well. So we have to incorporate that youth voice in order for these kids to buy into what they're learning. I know we see this happen a lot whenever we look at our teenage population that tends to slump down, especially with our teenage boys. I think that happens because mom and dad make me go to my club meetings, and then I turn 15, 16 years old, and I started sports, and I wasn't doing anything fun in 4-H anyways, so done. And we're not letting the kids say what they want to do and be involved in what they want to do. The kids that we see that continue on, a lot of times, once they reach that 14, 15 years old, they kind of know what they want to do. They join a shooting sports program. They join a horse program. So they tend to stick with one particular area. But we have to let the kids kind of guide us in that. And then sharing best practices. So all of our leaders have a lot of talents, and we need to provide space for them to kind of share what those best practices are rather than having them try to reinvent the wheel every time they go around something. Volunteers need support and reinforcement. So there's a little bit of research on the one pager there as well. But it's really basic stuff. You can look it up. I did a little bit of the lit review, but it's really simple stuff. You type in what you want to see because we already know what it is. So they need continuing education and professional development. They are seeking collaboration and partnership opportunities, and everybody wants to hear that they're doing important work. That was one thing I did take away from some of the research that I did, is that leaders don't necessarily seek out celebration of their own successes. They just want to know that what they're doing is important. The words don't mean much, but just knowing that they're doing something for other people is what kind of gives them the spur to continue on. So we have all these things that we need to give our leaders. We have these huge challenges, and the first one is the biggest challenge that we have is time. So a lot of our leaders are parents or grandparents. They have jobs. They have other volunteer opportunities that they take care of. They might be members of their community groups, churches, things like that. There's a lot of things pulling from them. Our 4-H Leaders Association meets once every other month. They meet 6 times out of the year. We have 250 volunteers, and we get 20 people to our 4-H Leaders Association 6 months out of the year. It's a very standard number. It's a very small segment of what we reach. They meet for 2 hours. It's really just a little bitty kind of drop in the bucket. But it all goes back to that time. These people have families. Leaders can't take off and leave their family, their kids at home and come to a Leaders Association meeting because they got to get dinner on the table. They got to help their kids with homework. And then also staff availability. We were talking about this a little bit earlier where we kind of have to restructure, and we're asking less staff to do more programming. And so trying to fit all of that in is really, really difficult. Program and project limitations. So our 4-H leaders have a strong knowledge base, but it's a limited knowledge base. So we might have a club leader who's very, very good in certain project areas, and their kids want to branch out into something different, and they don't know where to go to get those resources. And it's also asking a lot of them to provide something for everyone in their group. They might have one kid who's interested in horses, and they don't know where to send that kid to participate. Then we do our trainings, and it's tough to establish value. Like I said, we've got these 20 people out of 250 that we get for 2 hours at a time, and they want to know that it's worth their time. We need to give them tangible outcomes. So I always think about the first Leaders Association meeting I went to. We had discussed how we're having low turnout, and we did a tie-dye t-shirt workshop with our leaders. We didn't have any, we had 20 people come because the other 230 people didn't care about doing a tie-dye t-shirt. They had a tangible outcome, but it wasn't something they were necessarily going to use in their club, so what was the use in coming? Celebrating successes. So we need to carve out time so that we can let leaders not necessarily celebrate them, but allow them to share what they've learned, what they've done with other people. That's a celebration of success we're looking for, is letting them kind of talk about what they've done. Like I said, making it worth their time. So this idea of the 4-H Leaders Institute is going to be an annual one-day event, probably in the fall on a Saturday. Tried to think about some things, but like I said, this is a developing thing, and I'll talk about my advisory committee here in a moment. But planned annually for fall at the 4-H Training Center, which is in Saratoga County. We have around 45 acres of educational facilities there with classrooms, indoor and outdoor learning spaces. So my idea is to put it there, and for the people who have children, have our 4-H Teen Council provide childcare and children's activities. Sorry, I'm going way over the list. I'm so sorry. Also providing 4-H leader-led programming, so letting these leaders share what they do, whether it's animal sciences, sewing, whatever it might be. Providing diverse learning and hands-on opportunities. And then valued professional development opportunities. So putting together workshops for the whole group around positive youth development, diversity, inclusivity, all those types of things that we can do with the larger group. Project implementation, going to put together an advisory committee of 4-H leaders and community partners. So those obviously would be our 4-H leaders, but also members of our local community, whether it's YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, voices that we don't generally have around the table to bring up some of those needs that we might have. We'll have some program tracks. So we might have an animal science track, might have a sewing and textiles track, different things like that, so that it provides a diversity of programming that people can come participate into and hopefully get those numbers up. Programming provided by CC professionals, community partners, and also pulling from our 4-H leader knowledge base. Main thing is we were going to make sure we provide meals. Food, I know, is one of the most important parts to getting people to come to events, so allowing for that. Also allowing for collaboration by having leader roundtables, leader-led workshops, poster sessions, networking opportunities, so that these leaders can connect on things that they might share. Or enough, I guess. Project evaluation. This is my joke because we all love Qualtrics. We love the outcomes. We love looking at Qualtrics, but we hate filling out the data. We love seeing the data that comes out of it. But we will provide paper and online surveys to establish program effectiveness and suggestions for our next program that the advisory committee can take into account. And then also talk about changing of our advisory committee every year. Evaluation guided design, so using those suggestions to plan our design our next program. For future goals, continue to build on community needs. Obviously, we know these needs continue to change and continue to show themselves. Connect to presenters and also to build on those positive youth development concepts that we talked about. Hope to expand the scope as well outside of just Saratoga County and start incorporating it as a district event. After a couple of years, if we get some success there, to expand out to that. And then also incorporating some youth voice. So opening it up to our junior 4-H leaders and letting them kind of guide the program, putting them on our advisory committee, and also lead some workshops. All right, so that's my goals, my plans as soon as I find the time. So probably within the next 10, 15 years, we'll have something running. Any questions or suggestions you guys have? Yeah.
What would be your simple measure of success if you implement it?
That people come year 2. Really, that's the goal. I think when you try something new, in my experience, a lot of times I can generate some excitement around year 1. The real show is if there's value for people to come back the second year. So. Not yet. That's a very good question. Definitely something I need to take into account. By no means we're going to get 250 people. There's just no way we're going to. And I mean,
every Saturday has a conference.
Exactly. You're not going to have that happen. And some of the people it's not going to connect with. You know, the people that I see one time a year are probably not going to come. You know, they evaluate it fair, and that's the only time I see them. So that's a good question. I don't have an answer for it. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Leland, I noticed that you, as part of your implementation plan, talked about using your teen council to provide childcare. Mm-hmm. And I would like to challenge you to rethink that, only because those teen leaders can become really valuable adult leaders if you properly train them. So pulling them out of the training to provide childcare.
And I had thought about that as well. And that's definitely a piece, because whenever we open it up to that youth voice, I don't want to start off too big. I don't want to bite off too big of a chunk in the first year or two, and that's essentially when we open it up to those junior leaders. Yeah.
Do you have a parenting department in your family
do
and
not.
consumer sciences?
No, we do
That's
not.
unfortunate.
So I just really think that having an opportunity for parents to bring their kids along with
It's
them,
an important
and you know, maybe it's linking in other staff people who can provide programming for those kids throughout. That might be a piece of it.
Or a partner county, maybe.
Right.
Maybe a partner county.
Like Orange County coming up and doing that. Yeah, there we go. So I just think that's got to be a piece, because I know in talking to a lot of my leaders, that's one of their biggest barriers, is that they've got a family at home and they can't leave their kids at home and come to these meetings. So. Yep.
I have a question. So I saw in your kind of moving forward, thinking about, could this be a capital district event? And so on implementation side, one of the things that I've really focused in on that really helps me move things forward is when I have a partner in developing something, because I'm not going to let I'm not going to let my colleagues down. I could let myself down pretty easily because there's just too many things on the table, right? But if I have a partner, an accountability partner, a colleague that I wouldn't let down, that really helps. Also thinking that the leader training needs are just assuming great across the state, right? A lot of counties are probably lacking in providing leader training, whereas at one time that might have been a common thing. So I don't know, from the get-go, that might help kind of continue to move things forward in the times of, boy, there's a lot of things to do. I'm not really sure how I'm going to pull this one off by myself.
And it's funny you mentioned that, because when I had this idea at our state conference last year, I took it to 2 or 3 of my capital colleagues. One of them said, yes, if we had the time. And the other one said, oh, we used to do that. And that was basically where things died. And so I thought, if I could get some show of success and then open it up.
Sure.
But I think that's and originally the idea was to have a capital district so that we can pull from the larger knowledge base.
Yeah.
And that's definitely still, something that's.
I just follow up on that. Sure. So we used to have a state one. But I think one thing we'd be interested in hearing is, to move this forward, is what is that sweet spot? We know it's a huge challenge. How do we create more of a volunteer engagement around PYP, whether you're a shooting sports or an animal science volunteer or a robotics volunteer or a horticulture volunteer? We want to build that culture. That's all wonderful and great, and it all ties up to the positive development. So is the sweet spot going to a regional because something happens there? Is it the state? So whatever you learn, we could use the other regions and even statewide. We're doing this electronically, or
I think it has to be dynamic.
Here at Cornell, who knows?
I think it has to be dynamic as well, though, because we used to, and this is before I got there, but we used to mandate that all organizational leaders come to pick up the re-enrollment packets, and then we would have a meeting. And we tried to incorporate some positive youth development into that meeting, in addition to, oh, here's how you do your re-enrollments.
Right.
After a couple of years of that, people started hearing the same thing every year and lost all initiative to come. So I think that if we try to keep things a little bit, so they're not coming every year and hearing something. And that's why I did talk about build on those positive youth development concepts. So don't throw it all at them in the same year. Pick out a couple of activities. I think there's some really, really powerful activities that we can use to just kind of spur that thinking. And there are resources that we can forward people on. But I think if I offered the same thing every year, that would be a little bit hurtful to the program. That's the thought of this. I don't know for sure how this is going to work. So
Don't forget that a key reason why people volunteer is that they seek the networking, right? So just like collegial mentoring and collegial relationships with PDLC, I heard from a lot of cohort members that was really important in keeping you in and keeping you grounded and keeping you moving forward. Volunteers are the same way, they're adult learners, and those relationships are